Yabaseo, all my beautiful people. Welcome to the alternate point of view. Welcome if you are new. Please hit that like, subscribe, and share button. And please leave a comment if you are one of my OGs and have been stuck with this channel. Not stuck. You've been here. If you have been following this channel, watching this channel, and appreciating this channel, and most of all, supporting this channel by buying merch or by buying me a coffee. I greatly appreciate you guys so super bunches. You have no idea. So today we are going to be talking about, once again, yes, the Samantha Woll case. As I stated before, we are going to be breaking down the trial from start to finish, from the prosecution opening statements to the defense to every single witness to the very, very end, all the way until the mean judge sentenced Michael for an unreasonable amount of time. Most of us know the outcome, of course, of this trial, but I definitely want to break this down because there are so many holes in this case, so many unanswered questions, so many pieces of the puzzle that seem to be missing. And I think that when we get to the end of this, we're going to discover what pieces are missing and where they're missing and who they belong to. And it's unfortunate that I'm all the way here in Austin, Texas, and Detroit is, well, you know, where Detroit is, and they can't seem to figure out their own missteps, or they don't want to see their missteps because they are so locked in on Michael Jackson Bolanos. Unfortunately for them, though, they have the wrong person. So let's go back in time, not far off in time, but in time enough to see what the defense now has to say. Remember, yesterday I went over the prosecution opening argument, which was really, really bad. He basically, within the first 30 seconds of his argument, blamed the victim for leaving her door open, and that's why she was attacked. Then he blamed the fact that the case was just so difficult and so hard that we were going to go down this journey together of how hard it was for the police to come up with the evidence that they needed to come up with to get connected to Michael Jackson Bolanos. Because why? They were not going to be showing any evidence that was going to connect Michael Jackson Bolanos to this crime when they start this trial, because there was none. Why? Because they had to basically fabricate evidence, put together evidence to link Michael Jackson Bolanos to this crime. And he says that they had to do a colossal investigation in order to bring Michael Jackson Bolanos connected to this crime. So they didn't do any colossal investigating to put Jeffrey to the crime, or David Wilkinson, or Aaron, I can't remember his last name, but Aaron or anyone else to this crime. Just Michael Jackson Bolanos. And then he throws in the slash tire vehicle, which has absolutely zero to do with the crime. Because why? Why does it have nothing to do with the crime? Has nothing to do with the crime because none of the weapons tested, or so-called weapons, let me just rephrase, tested, had anything to do with the crime. Nothing. They don't have a per se smoking gun, okay? Not from Jeffrey, not from Michael, not from anyone. So having that even presented made zero sense. They went through all of this information, as he stated in his opening statement. They were going to present evidence that literally did nothing to connect Michael Jackson Bolanos to the crime. Nothing. Not even any rubber from those supposed slash tires that they are trying to say that Michael did. Did they find any rubber? No. Did they ask about any rubber? No. They asked if there was any blood on those knives, which there were not. And did they say if there was any rubber mixed in with Samantha's wounds? No, they never did, because that wasn't asked. Why? Because that vehicle with the had absolutely nothing to do with the case other than to plant a seed in the jury's mind that Michael was much more sinister than he appeared to be walking the streets of Detroit that night. So they wanted to plant a seed to make it seem like Michael was much, much more evil than just someone who was checking cars looking for free stuff or stuff that he could get for free. So let's go and listen to the defense opening statement, and let's see what Brian Brown has to say. Now, I am going to caveat Brian Brown with this. Perception is reality, and I am not saying anything against Brian Brown. I like Brian Brown. He is an amazing attorney. I've spoken to him. He's been very good, great communicator. But a lot of the comments and a lot of the chats that I saw as this trial was going on were pertaining to Brian Brown's looks and Michael's looks and their suits. So I can see that the perception of Brian Brown and Michael and the way they were dressed and whatever, and Brian's hair was what threw people off. Okay. So I'm wondering, unfortunately, which is really sad that this even has to be mentioned, is that I'm wondering if the look of Brian Brown, because he didn't have the clean, polished, look of Ryan Elsey, let's say, didn't put the jury off a little bit, which is very disappointing. If the public who's watching this trial is making comments that way, then I'm wondering if the jury has those kind of thoughts in the back of their mind as well, which is really sad. And I think it's also very rude. So I'm just putting that out there only because there were comments that were made on the chat in the Detroit Fox News chat. There were comments that were made in my chats. There were comments that were made in other chats. So it bothers me. It shouldn't matter. Like, he didn't go in there looking like some bum off the street, but just because he had dreads, I think that was what they were getting at. And they were making it seem like he was unprofessional looking. But regardless, he did a very good job. So I just want to put that out there, that if that had anything to do with any decision making in the juror's mind, I would hope that it did not. But let's go to sharing Brian's defense opening statement. And we are going to break that down. Again, I'm going to pause during this opening statement and break down what Brian is saying. And we're just going to go through it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now, my version and my reviewing of the facts and the evidence, I believe, will be like yours. Completely different than what the prosecutor indicates. Yes, Samantha Woll tragically died on October 21st. However, it was not Michael Jackson Bolanos who did this. She was stabbed 8 times. In the neck, in the back of the head, in the back of the neck. To me, that would indicate a crime of passion. This wasn't just some random person walking into her house trying to steal anything. And another thing the prosecutor would not indicate, nothing of value was taken from her house. She had valuables. Her purse was in plain view. Credit cards, cell phones, laptops, plain view. Now, I suggest if anybody came into this particular house to steal something and to stab her 8 times, surely they would have taken something of value. Another thing that the prosecutor will not mention, she was beaten up. She had contusions on her face. She had bruises on her face. She struggled. Whoever this was, she struggled with them. And this particular situation took time. This wasn't a situation that took 1 minute to do. It was evidence that there was a struggle in multiple rooms. There was fruit from the kitchen, a basket that was knocked over. There was indication that the pillows were moved on top of the blood per their own blood splatter analysis expert, who would testify that it would indicate that the pillows fell on the blood afterwards, which would indicate that there was a struggle, in my opinion. Also, there was a high concentration of blood in the hallway leading out to the front door, which in their own expert's opinion would indicate that the body was there for a time. This wasn't a 1 minute, 2 minute thing. Her body dropped after being stabbed repeatedly, and she was laying in the hallway for a period of time. You're also going to hear testimony from their detective, who would indicate from the pictures that there was a footprint that's leading to the back of the apartment. And where that footprint is, it crosses the threshold of where the motion would detect. There's an OIC who would testify that it takes approximately 218 inches from the front door towards the motion sensor in the back to trigger the motion. These footprints were exactly in the position where they would detect the motion on the motion detection. And then the footprint goes outside. Now, the prosecutor wants you to believe that allegedly my client went in there at 4:20, stabbed her 8 times, tussled with her from room to room, and then there's no more item. The system went into idle mode at 4:22. We would have to agree and assume that it takes a period of time in order for the system to go into idle mode. Idle mode is where it's a lack of motion inside of the apartment for a predetermined amount of time. And once that amount of time happens with no motion, the system goes into idle mode. Now, there was tests that were done on November the 9th by the OIC Stockmeyer, along with other law enforcement. And she indicated she found out how far it would have to be for the motion to detect. Now, there was a preliminary examination, and a question was posed to her. Exactly or approximately how long does it take in order for the system to go into idle? She didn't have an answer for that. Question was asked, were you curious of that? Why didn't you determine how long? Because that could narrow down the window of how long somebody was possibly in the house. This test or question wasn't examined or asked for months after that preliminary examination, to the end of April. It's when they finally determined that they wanted to know when or how long it would take for the system to go into idle mode. Now, Samantha Woll was found outside, and you would hear testimony from an individual, Kevin Moore, who indicated he touched the body to see if she was alive. Now, a question was asked of him, if he wouldn't know, of whether or not when he touched that body, did he get blood on his sleeve? Now, of course, the OIC or law enforcement never did any analysis of his clothing. But I just want you to think, if they had, I'm sure they would have found trace amounts of blood on his sleeve or his clothing from just touching the body to see if she was alive or not. She had an ex-boyfriend, and you will hear testimony from him, as indicated by the prosecutor, a Jeff Herbstman, who called the police in a guilt-stricken situation where he indicated that he thought he had killed her. And not only that, that he felt that he was trying to outsmart people. Now, one of the evidences that they say that they use to clear Mr. Herbstman is the lack of his phone being in the location of Samantha Woll's apartment. Now just think, if you're trying to outsmart somebody, would you bring a phone? And you also hear testimony from officers who indicated when they got a search warrant, they felt that that is a tactic that is used by certain individuals to leave their phone before going to the scene of the crime. You will also hear evidence that Jeff Hersman's location cannot be accounted for from October the 20th at 8 o'clock until the next day. They can't even account for where his phone was at. You will also hear testimony and evidence that he had a camera system in his house, that none of the pictures or footage from this camera could be obtained because they were all either deleted or the memory card was taken from there, but there was an inability to extract footage from Mr. Hersman's camera that could suggest him leaving the location that particular night. He was arrested by Kalamazoo police. He then got on the phone with his psychiatrist, and then his story changes of what he originally said. After taking into custody, stating that he had a lawyer who he couldn't remember her name, got a call from his parents that he was in the police station. They didn't ask why he was there. And the reason why they didn't ask why he was there, because he already had told them. They secured a lawyer from him after him telling them what he had did, just like he told the police. Now, you will hear evidence or see evidence that my client was walking around the city. He was. You will hear evidence that he took a bag out from a car. You will hear evidence that there was some rubber gloves in it that he just happened to put on. You will hear evidence that there was some candy inside the bag that he was snacking on as he walked around. You will also hear evidence from a Detroit police officer, Chad Osmond, who indicated that when Mr. Jackson Bolanos was arrested, that he in fact told Officer Osmond that, yes, I was in the area. I seen somebody laying on the ground. I walked over to the body to see if they were alive, and I touched her. And I realized she was dead and ran off.
Judge, objection could be approached.
So this is very important because when this particular officer does get on the stand and does testify, he doesn't testify, but he does. It's really strange. I'm not really sure, this will mean something later, why they do this objection and go to sidebar. This will come together for you all later when we are breaking down every witness's testimony. All of these things that he's mentioning in his opening argument will come together later. Just remember that he mentions the officer in charge. She will definitely come in and make sense later. This officer, Chad Osmond, will make sense later. All of these people that he's mentioning are going to come into play later, but they will not be helpful for Michael. They seem to be pretty biased. It seems like the Detroit Police Department had, like I said yesterday, they had a suspect. It literally states in their statement, we have a suspect. We're not ready to name them yet. We don't want to say what the relationship is between the victim and the suspect. So this was within the first 48 hours of the incident. So they had someone, and then they did a complete turnaround, and now Michael Jackson Bolanos is the suspect. And that seems very, very strange because literally, again, as I stated, there was no danger supposedly to the community. They calmed everyone down and said it was not an anti-Semitic crime. They said that there was no forced entry. No one ever mentioned that her door was left wide open. Like I said, Detroit doesn't tell you jack, okay? They don't tell you anything. They don't say anything until they're ready to come out and put out a name and be like, okay, here's who we're prosecuting. Bam. That's what we're doing. They don't tell you a thing. They don't ask you for help. They don't nothing, okay? Wayne County prosecutors office is just complete trash, period. Kim Worthy has been running unopposed. I think she's on her 6th or 7th term at this point, and nobody goes against her. Nobody. So this has just been quid pro quo all these years, and it's just going to keep going on that way until somebody finally stands up and says something and does something about it to fix it. So if you want your family members, if you want to keep living in Detroit, keep living in trash, and keep living in a place where they're going to keep charging and convicting the wrong person for the wrong crime just because they have a record, then keep on doing it. Keep on voting the way you're voting. That's totally up to you. I don't live in Detroit. I ain't got to put up that crap. I live in Texas. So I'm free. But y'all ain't free. So y'all can go up there and live somewhere where you're about to get thrown in jail just walking around the street. So there is no way that Detroit PD solved this case in a month. They did not do that. No, they did not do that. They had this case actually in 48 hours, supposedly, they had a suspect. So something is amiss here. I keep saying this, but I know this timeline does not match. It does not match. They have completely missed the real timeline and just completely skipped that, the obvious timeline, and gone for one that is just completely off the rails. They put a timeline in. They tried to fit it so that Michael could be the Flash and get this done in lickety split time. When there's an entire timeline, a chunk of time where there was plenty of opportunity and motive and outsmarting the police time. And that's exactly what that person did, was outsmart the police, apparently. And I guess the police don't care to be outsmarted because this case, that's totally what happened. So they don't mind having egg on their face. That's totally fine with them. I mean, it is Detroit, so what would they care? Whoever's filling whoever else's pockets up there, they don't care. So, yeah, I just think that it stinks. But he is trying to make a point in saying that there's going to be a police officer that's going to come up there and say something that's going to contradict and going to explain how this microscopic drops of blood got onto Michael's jacket. And the prosecution does not want that evidence in, even though they're trying to give use immunity to dang Jeffrey Herbstman.
So you will hear evidence from their blood splatter analysis expert, who would indicate that there was a projection of blood that came from this wall that was on the wall. Now, you would see video footage of my client who left, was walking around, not covered in blood at all. You would see a copious amount of blood inside of this particular location. No shoe prints, nothing that would indicate that my client walked through a pool of blood in multiple rooms. None of my clients' clothes were ever discarded. Now, you will hear evidence that a Tierra White, in fact, washed his coat as a matter of her ordinary course of washing his clothes. She would state that he would wear this jacket, which is more akin to a hoodie, that he would wear, she would wear it, and when he comes home from wearing it, or when she comes home from wearing it, it's thrown into the dirty clothes hamper, and then subsequently washed as a matter of course. Now, the telephone call that was referenced by the prosecutor is my client at that point in time had no idea she washed it. He's indicating like, hey, if I did what they said I did with all this blood, I'd have been covered in blood. It had been covered in blood. And then she makes a statement like, oh, I washed it. Unbeknownst to him, this was news to him, unbeknownst to him that she washed this particular jacket. He never instructed her to wash the jacket. He never tried to discard the jacket, throw the jacket away, the pants he was wearing, the shoes he was wearing. None of these items were ever discarded. Now, the prosecutor is going to try to submit multiple knives that my client just happened to have. One of them in an old jacket that he didn't wear for months that they found in a pocket. One of them was in another pouch, and one was on him when he was subsequently arrested the second time. These knives were sent off to it, being analyzed. And of course, none of the knives came back with any evidence whatsoever that would associate my client with Ms. Woll or being at this particular scene. The only evidence that they have is a trace spot on the back of a sleeve. The back of the sleeve, not the front. There's no blood anywhere on the front of his jacket. There's no blood on the front of pants. There's no blood on the shoes at all. The prosecutor wants to put this theory out that it's possible because he's in the area, and that if he was looking into cars, then he must have went into an apartment to commit a murder without taking anything, and finally stabbing her 8 times while beating her up. Now, when he was arrested, they photographed his body to see if he had any defensive wounds, any scratches, any evidence whatsoever that would suggest that he had been into a struggle with somebody, had been into a fight with somebody. No evidence whatsoever. Not even the small inkling. Now, my client was arrested twice. Once on November the 30th. They seized his phone. They seized his car. He made no attempt whatsoever to evade or avoid law enforcement, but quite the contrary. He repeatedly contacted the detectives, asking when can he get his property back, calling them every single day, to the fact that I'm sure they were tired of him. Simultaneously, they had him under surveillance. Unbeknownst to him, he went about his lifestyle, going to work, going to home, taking his friend to work, made no effort whatsoever to try to leave, to conceal, or do anything whatsoever. Now, when he was questioned by the officers originally made reference to glasses that my client had previously pawned, some Cartier glasses, expensive glasses. And if anybody knows about Cartier glasses, they know that sometimes violence happens beyond these glasses. People want these glasses. So when the police are asking him about glasses, he's thinking like, hey, what you saying? I found these glasses. I didn't take them from anybody. I didn't rob anybody for these glasses at all. So they were being very vague. So, and he indicated, no, I didn't rob anybody for these glasses. Why would they be talking about glasses? So they failed to mention that was the topic of the conversation. So he's already on guard. They're already using deception tactics against my client. They then indicate that they saw him walk inside of this apartment, and they can pinpoint him being inside this apartment, which was a lie. They said they had video of him going into this apartment, which was a lie, which naturally would put him on guard and say, hey, if I did see her, now I don't want to say anything because now you're saying that you saw me do something I know is untrue, so now I'm on guard. I don't even want to tell you anything because you're using deception against me. And sometimes deception begots deception. And that's exactly what happened in this particular situation. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, after all the evidence is submitted, we want you to use your logic and reasoning skills to realize that the time frame that they say that this happened in is virtually impossible. Virtually impossible for him to come in there and stab her that many times, beat her up in less than a minute, and then he's seen on camera at 4:23, not 4:24, at 4:23, walking in front of Greektown Casino, walking towards individuals who were outside, striking. Made no attempt whatsoever to conceal himself. Had he been involved in a bloody murder, surely you're not going to walk towards people. You'll be covered in blood. People would notice that as you walk by somebody being covered in blood after the way that crime scene looked. You're going to hear from a witness, James Griffin, who indicated he was sure he distinctly remembered hearing at 1:38 something that really shook him or really got to him. And he felt guilty about it. He tried to convince himself that he did not hear Samantha Woll scream or make a statement, don't do something. Maybe don't stab me, don't hurt me. He distinctively remembers and tried to convince himself that that wasn't the case because he would feel bad and he felt callous for the next 24 hours, which is around the time of when her last activity of her phone was around 1:30ish, is when he heard that. He's then approached again months later by officers, and he changes his story up and says that, oh, that couldn't have been the case. I think it was earlier because I got up to let my dogs out and then I went back to sleep and I have a watch to substantiate that, I guess suggesting that he went back into REM sleep. If anybody knows what REM sleep is, rapid eye movement sleep, it takes quite some time to get to, that he went back from walking his dog, from waking up, walking his dog back to REM sleep in a matter of like 4 minutes, which I would think that was incorrect. He just wanted to convince himself that he did not hear the murder of Samantha Woll because that would be weighed on his conscience. So ladies and gentlemen, please pay real good attention to what you hear and just think logically. And I believe you will come back with a not guilty. Thank you.
Okay, so he basically got up there and hit on all the points that the prosecution hit on. The ADT timeline, mostly the part about the 420 timeline that they're going with. He didn't really touch on the timeline that the prosecution did go through, which is the big chunk of time that motion sensor never does go idle. There is nearly an hour of time that living room motion sensor is continuously finding motion, which means that there is someone in the living area that must be allowing the motion to still be sensed. Now, we do know that there is a time that Samantha does come home, right? And she goes upstairs and changes her dress into something more comfortable. Obviously, as I've stated in other videos, she puts on a pair of sweatpants, a pair of long sleeve top, and a hoodie. Women do not put that on to go lay on the sofa and go to sleep. There is a reason she's fully dressed. She's either got someone over, or she's waiting for someone to come over, or she's just, there's a reason. You're not going to sit in your wedding outfit that you were in to go to the wedding, but you're going to sit in something comfortable enough to chat with somebody. And it's cold there. So, in case you go out, say goodbye, whatever, you're going to be wearing something that's going to be warm. So whatever they're thinking, women don't do that. I'll just tell you, I've said this in other videos. When we get home from somewhere, think the clothes come off. Okay. The clothes come off, the bra's coming off, everything's coming off. Okay. We are not about to be wearing the clothes, coming in the house, because we are ready to get out of that stuff. We've been in it for hours. We're ready to get out of it. So it took her a little while to go upstairs and change out of that stuff. So that means there's someone in the living room. And like I said before, my boyfriend worked for ADT, and he stated that what she had in her living room, as far as ADT is concerned, is she had the regular package, right? She had the normal package, the things on the doors, the typical window break thing, probably, and then obviously the motion thing in the living room. So that tells him that she had the basic ADT package. Okay. So she didn't have motion sensors upstairs. She didn't have the motion sensors anywhere else, just by the doors, the door things that she had the door alarms on. And then she had the motion sensor in the living room. So that's where you can see that she was getting the motion at, and the motion did not change and did not go idle until 1:24. So when it doesn't go idle until 1:24, then that means someone was moving. Also, when he said you were going to hear from the officer in charge, remember, that's going to come later. And the officer in charge is going to be very interesting with her testimony. And Officer Osmond, who the prosecution objected to, you're going to find out why the prosecution objects to that. There is so many holes in this case that it is mind-boggling. And I will tell you why. I've already done, like I said, a 13-part series, Murder on Joliet, that I'm going to transfer over into a podcast because, well, it needs to be transferred into a podcast because it's a very, very interesting story. And I feel like there's more to this story than just bad investigating. It's more, I think, corruption and money and power involved in this case than anything else. And I believe that law enforcement is not interested in any other suspects other than Michael Jackson Bolanos. I believe that they don't want to find anyone else for this, which is really sad because Samantha Woll deserves justice and her family deserves justice. And I don't believe that they want to come out and admit that they were wrong or that they, got the wrong person from jump. They don't want to admit that. They never do. They no officers, no investigators, no prosecutor's office ever wants to come out and say, we got the wrong person, But after all of the money and publicity and everything they put into this, they never want to say we got the wrong guy. So that's just too much of a pride thing, right? So you don't ever want to be like, oh my gosh, we have to say we put this on the wrong person. We took someone's life, basically, and took it away. And that's exactly what they did to Michael. And the sad part is that, Michael is not a perfect person. He's a criminal. I mean, he did criminal things. He has criminal behavior. He has a criminal background. But that is a far, far jump from checking cars. And the cops, this is the bad thing, is the cops know this. They're not dumb. They're not completely dumb. They know that checking cars is a huge, huge separation from doing this to Samantha. They know that. They know that. They're just looking at, this is just another wasted criminal off the street. This is just another person that has a criminal background that we don't have to keep arresting over and over again. So what the heck? And honestly, that's really sad. But that is exactly what their mindset is. And they don't feel the need to go any further with it. And why would they care if, what's even sadder is if it is Jew on Jew crime, why would they care if, if they can get a criminal off the street who, whether or not they're going to be a repeat offender again or not, get them off the street so they don't have to worry about that person anymore, even though he's not a violent offender. I mean, he's just a petty thief. That's easier than worrying about all the publicity and all the crap that's going to come down on Detroit by putting someone like, let's say, Jeffrey Herbstman up for this, because you have a huge Jewish and Muslim community going on up there in the middle of a Hamas-Israel war. And a lot of money pumping into Detroit and Michigan right now. And all that money is coming from the Jewish organizations. And most of the people who are running Detroit are connected to or are Jewish. So I'm just saying, that's not a coincidence. And then to find out that one of the detectives, the very detective that put together the video that tracks Michael all across downtown Detroit, he now works for the FBI. That is so insane. And Brian Elsey, like I said yesterday, now works for the DOJ. So this is not a coincidence, you guys. This is not a coincidence. These jobs being given to these Detroit detectives and prosecutors, attorneys, and all of this stuff happening, the money that is flowing into the synagogue, all of this publicity that they're getting, all of these elections that are happening right now, all of these Jewish people getting in these high positions. This is not a coincidence. And you can say I have a tinfoil hat on or whatever, but this is not a coincidence. This is real deal Holyfield stuff. Okay. And it's happening in Detroit and it's happening in Michigan. And that is why also, in case you didn't notice at the DNC, they had Slotkin, they had Dana Nessel, they had Gretchen Whitmer. Michigan is huge for the Democrats. Huge. So yeah. I find it very, very odd that Michigan seems to be incarcerating more people than any other. Again, I'll say this at every video. They're incarcerating more people than any other Democratic country. And 54% of the people incarcerated are not even convicted yet. So that's Kim Worthy. That's Dana Nessel. That's Gretchen Whitmer. That's money. That's power. That's something going on in Michigan. Okay. So that is a lot of people that are being wrongfully accused. And there needs to be something done about that. And the fact that the police department there doesn't care to hear or, we'll put it in our notes, any new evidence or any possible new theories or any possible new anythings, because they're kind of stuck in limbo right now because the prosecution is actually appealing this Supreme Court double jeopardy. That is something else that's really, really sad is they still want to get Michael for this so badly that they're willing to appeal a Supreme Court ruling so that they can get Michael for this crime rather than go back to the drawing table and investigate and really find and just go back and look. Just scratch it all off. Go back and look. And look at that hour. Look at that 50-something minutes of time that motion is still going in the living room and figure out who in the hell was in her house with her. Who was it? Go back. Go look. Get a fresh set of eyes on it. Some that aren't biased and aren't being bought. That would be amazing. I don't think that exists in Detroit. If it does, show me who you are. Show me who you are in Detroit that's not bought and paid for. And that will solve this for the sake of Samantha. Because that's who this is about. It's about Samantha. It's not about what election you're going to win, whose pocket is getting lined, or whatever. It's about getting justice for Samantha Woll and her family. And again, I pray for her family. I pray for her family to see the light. I pray for her family to understand that, it is very, very important that she get justice. And the only way to justice is the truth. And the truth shall set you free. So I hope for the sake of Samantha and her family that they will open their minds and open their eyes and understand that there is something amiss. I will say, as far as Brian's opening argument, there wasn't really a strategy that you could tell they were going to be using. He just kind of went over some bullet points. So I couldn't really tell a strategy. So usually when you hear the defense's opening argument, you get a strategy idea of what they're going for. I think he tried to give the strategy when he was talking about Officer Osmond, but the prosecutors kind of nipped that in the bud when they objected. So I think that messed up his idea or whatever they were going to do. So it wasn't the strongest opening argument, I can tell you, but there was some little seeds planted of doubt in that opening argument. But then we're going to go into the trial and go through every witness testimony. I will have to put some of them on like double time the speed because there's a couple of witnesses that are absolutely not-offs. Like they will make you want to go to sleep. So yeah. I just want to say I appreciate everyone so much. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. please hit that like, subscribe, and share button if you enjoy this content. I know we're going to continue to talk about Samantha Woll, but I want to help solve this murder. I really, really do. I'm sorry, this red rum. Dang it, YouTube. I really do want to help solve this. I want to get justice for Samantha Woll. This is a case that has really been just really eating at me, and I just don't want to see it go cold. I don't want to see it go cold because of Detroit and Wayne County's egos. I want to see something move here. I want to help this case be solved because it needs to be. Samantha deserves justice. And I know her family keeps saying that Samantha would never want someone to be falsely accused and would never, ever, ever, and she had Black Lives Matter and blah, 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 blah. If that were the case, then seriously, again, they're a family of doctors. Like, think like doctors. Realize that, I mean, it's a medical examiner's only job is to put a cause of death and an estimated time of death on an autopsy. And literally they put a manner of death, which was homicide, but they didn't put a cause of death. What is her cause? What caused it? Did she bleed out? How long would it have taken her to bleed out? What time? You can tell those things. Hello. I mean, I went to college for this. You can tell this stuff based on stomach contents, blood samples, liver, rigor mortis, liver mortis, all of those things. That gives you an estimated time of death. It's not rocket science. So I'm just praying. I'm just praying. So tomorrow I will go over straight into the prosecutor's witnesses, and we can do more than one witness at a time. But I do want to talk about the witness testimony, and we will go break those down, each and every one. And of course, we are going to be pausing and stopping and discussing what they're saying. And remember, it's not always what they're saying, but let's look at some of the things that they're not saying. Okay? So again, I appreciate everyone. Thank you for supporting this channel. Please don't forget, you can buy me a coffee since I'm not monetized. And please like, subscribe, and hit the share button and comment. And I also want to say thank you to Leah Larson for helping me with this. She is in Denmark, I believe. She has her own YouTube channel. I'm going to put her link to her channel in my description. I did that yesterday as well. She's doing a series on Samantha Woll. Also, she has some very good information. She's been trying to solve this as well. It's been taking up all of her time too. And she has some really great information, especially about the timing with the ADT system, the blood evidence. It's really good stuff. I really appreciate all of her help and efforts because I can't do this alone. I need all the help that I can get because Detroit is really just not helping. So they're just, I mean, you know, I've reached out to private investigators. I've done all the things that I can to try and get as much help as I can. And apparently it's going to be us YouTubers that are going to solve this because, yeah, if we don't, no one else will. And, you know, now that I'm saying that, Wayne County might get off their butts and do something. Who knows? Y'all have a great night. 감사합니다.